Dear colleagues, we continue our work and I invite to the microphone official spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense, Colonel Oleksandr Motuzyanyk. Good afternoon, everybody. Please listen to the information about major events which happened yesterday in the ATO area. So yesterday around Lugansk, there was relatively quiet. There, the enemies did not use heavy weaponry in general. After midnight, the militants opened grenade fire over Motuzyanyk. After sunset, they 3 times shelled Stanitsa Luhanska and the suburbs close to the Russian border from grenade launchers and small arms. Yesterday, in general, around Lugansk, there were 4 shellings. Near Donetsk, the enemies considerably decreased their fire activities. The only exclusion from that general rule yesterday was Avdiivka, where the militants shelled our positions from mortars during almost 2 hours, and they opened fire from 2 different directions and launched 37 mines. Also, several shellings were yesterday near Svetlodarsk Bridge, Zaitseva and Opetna. In general, around Donetsk, there were 6 shellings, and from them 1 from heavy weaponry. Near Mariupol, as in the previous day, the combat activities in around Mariupol were in Mariinsky district and in coastal areas. The enemies continues to shell our positions both in day and night, although not using heavy weaponry. Only in Pavlopol, several mines were launched over our positions. The major enemies' activities near Mariupol were near Pavlopol, Gnutovo, Shirokino, which took 80% of all the fire shellings in around Mariupol. In general, around Mariupol, yesterday there were 31 enemy shelling. In general, there were no losses among Ukrainian servicemen, and 2 servicemen were wounded in result of the blast of explosive ordnance. After arrival to the Novazovsk of Russian Special Task Force soldiers, the so-called 9th Regiment of the militants experienced increased number of those who would like to be relocated and deployed to other regiments because the Russians appeared to be very cruel. Yesterday there was armed fight between the occupants and the Russian officers, and 3 occupants were killed and 9 wounded. In so-called 6th Regiment, there were officially registered 80 deserters, but in reality this number is bigger. These days, in the Novolugansk, in Bakhmut district, in Donetsk region, the Ukrainian policemen had detained a militant. This local resident voluntarily joined illegal band formation in May 2014. He repaired cars and organized checkpoints near Novolugansk, but later, since he was not paid, he quitted from the this illegal band formation. 1 more participant of so-called LPR used the SBU program. You are waited at home. His responsibilities in the band formation were similar to his colleague from Novolugansk, but he voluntarily approached to the Ukrainian security service, and now his activities will be investigated, and he has a chance to be liberated from criminal responsibility. In Pokrovsk district near Donetsk, the law enforcement officers had discovered a hidden storage with explosive ordination, and the law enforcement officers expropriated 2 anti-infantry mines, 2 explosive ordinances, then 2.5 kilograms of TNT, 3 combat grenades, and more than 2,000 of cartridges. Also yesterday, the special police task forces in Donetsk region had been trained in detention and neutralizing armed criminals, and in result of successful training, they gained new skills. Now time for questions. Ukrainian radio, would you please specify? You mentioned that Avdiivka was shelled from 2 directions by the enemies. From which directions it was shelled? And the second question, how would you explain that decreased number of shellings which you mentioned? And how do the Ukrainian analysts explain that numerous cases of deserting? So the decreased number of shellings usually could be caused by different reasons, but the most often are as follows: that they experience a deficit in cartridges and shells, or they do not get the orders to shell. Nevertheless, we stay alarmed. As for Avdiivka, the enemy's objective was to provoke our servicemen, shelling those 2 settlements which remain under control of Ukrainian government forces. Nevertheless, Ukrainian servicemen stuck with the Minsk agreements never opened fire from heavy weaponry, and moreover not always respond to the enemy shellings when it is possible not to respond. Thank you, dear colleagues. At 1 p.m. we will have special Christmas greetings from Leadership Academy in Mykolaiv.